Good afternoon, everyone. It's Penny and Kim from FCSS, lighting up your Friday with our 5 stars for creating healthy families. I think that's what we are. So we're here again.
Really?
With our second installment in our 4 video series on relationships and social connection. So we're just gonna, last week we talked a little bit about what does it mean to be a good friend. And part of that concept was kindness, which fits lovely with February, which is Kindness Month. So we invited you, challenged you to try to do some random acts of kindness, or a random act of kindness, either to yourself or to other people. So smiling or paying for somebody's meal behind you, anything you could manage, kind word. So wondering how things went. Kim, manage anything?
Well, my favorite of these has to be smiling, because I think it just lights. I actually love to see how the other person's face lights up. And it's actually something that I started doing quite a few years ago. I told myself I was going to smile at people, and it just is, it's amazing to see how catchy it is, how contagious it is, even behind the mask. So yeah, and saying hello, adding a hello to it. What wonderful, loved it.
Yeah, for me it was making eye contact. And excuse me, in Warner we have this little store that's open all the time, and a lovely couple, young family that runs it, and she's very friendly. And so I've made the effort to stop when I go in and say hello. And when I say, how are you? I actually look in her eyes and say, how are you? And I use her name and wait for her to reply. So I've been trying to do that. And so that was my random act of kindness. And
yeah, it feels good, especially in our day and age, I guess, because I know when the first COVID restrictions first started, it was, nobody was saying hello. Everybody was, so now it's kind of getting back to that connection, or saying hello and all those things, and it feels good. So yeah.
All right, so today we're going to continue on talking about relationships, and Kim is going to give us our question for today.
Yes, so the question that we thought we would ask is, how do you make amends when you mess up in a relationship? So now that could be a relationship, as we talked about last week. It could be a relationship with ourselves. It could be a relationship with nature. It could be a relationship with people that we know, work with, or our family. So Penny, do you want to share any ideas on something that we could do when we mess up in a relationship?
Yeah, so I always find it helpful, I always have, sort of to have some sort of a strategy, or like almost like a rehearsal or a plan, or like I find it really helpful to have something written down, concrete, to remind myself, because often when you're in the heat of the moment, it's not the easiest time to remember things. So a long time ago, I read, and again, I can't remember where, about I think it's 5 steps in an apology. So, first of all, is acknowledging that you've made a mistake, and giving myself time to talk to myself about that and not beat myself up about it. So that's kind of my first step, is, yeah, that wasn't good. I wish I would have done that differently, whatever the reasons are, and now I have to do something about that. Okay. So then to the other person, I try to be specific about what it was that I did. Owning my own part in it, which means not owning their part, but accepting that, yes, I've done something and I am responsible for my own behavior, I yelled at you. And then I try to, if I can, say why that's not appropriate. So if it's my kids, for example, which these days that's who I'm apologizing to the most, is I know when I yell, it hurts your feelings. And sometimes it scares you. And then I follow up with what I'm going to try to do better next time. So next time, I'm going to try to stop, take a breath, remind myself of how we speak to each other. You know, that's a good reminder for them too, and me. And then I'm sorry. And you can choose to follow that with a do you forgive me or do you not forgive me? There's different ideas about that. I think especially relating to another grown-up, that's a really beautiful way to really show your sincerity is, you know, I realize I've hurt you. You know, I'm not brushing it under the rug. I'm not making excuses. I've hurt you. Here's my apology. Can you forgive me? And yeah, that's kind of my way. So kindness and forgiveness for myself, acknowledgement that I have, not like, well, if they wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have, right? Because that's really popular with me. Only everyone else was perfect and I would never get grumpy.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are your thoughts about making amends?
Very, very similar as well. And it goes back to a little bit about what we talked about last week, and it goes back to understanding. So, and not being perfect people. We all make mistakes. So, you know, in a disagreement or of a relationship, sometimes this is where the biggest learning can happen, you know. And so, I mean, as hard as it is to be grateful or find some gratitude for this mess up in the relationship or whatever if the situation is, I do try to look for that. I do try to be understanding and put myself in the other person's shoes, and often that's when I come back to my senses, because what happens oftentimes in upset is we flip our lids. We go into the fight or flight mode when there's no saber-toothed tiger in the room, no bear in the room. So if I'm the person that comes to my senses first and realize I've said some things that I don't mean and I need to apologize, then I do. And it's not easy. I realize that this is the best way to teach our kids how to apologize is by modeling. So I love that you said it's often with my kids that I'm apologizing. That's the best way to teach them, rather than by forcing them to say, now you say sorry. Apologizing is the best thing that you can model. It's one of the, well, modeling is a great for all parenting, but this one is my personal favorite because it is just such a great way to show a genuine apology. So, and then without taking out the fishing rod and reeling it back, you know, but if you had just listened in the first place, or if you just seen it my way, you know, to me, that's taking it right back. So I just zip my lip and leave it. So I do the apology. I'm sorry that I hurt you. I'm sorry that I scared you, or whatever it was, you know, in the situation. And then I understand that I may have come to my senses before they have. So they may not be ready to forgive and that they may need some time. So I'm okay with that. And I think a lot of times we apologize and then we don't get the forgiveness right away, and so then we're then hurt again, and it kind of starts all over again. But if we have the understanding that it may take them some time for them to, you know, come back to this feeling, and it may, or depends on what happened or what we did, right? It may take some time for them to feel that again, right? So we have to allow for that and understand that's not an attack on us as a human being. It's just how we are as human beings. That's a natural way that when one person says, I'm sorry, the other person needs some time to come back. That's to me, that's huge, because it's oftentimes, you know, when you've said I'm sorry and the person's like still like this, it can hurt us too, right? But if we understand that that's how it works, we can be patient and take a couple steps back. And
yeah, so what I'm loving about that, and I think what I'm hearing you say, is that checking in with yourself about your expectations and your motivation for apologizing. So if your motivation is to really convey remorse and to try to make a repair,
yeah,
you have to remind yourself that that person has the right to not accept your apology immediately or not forgive you immediately. That, like you said, that might take time, and to start off with that motivation, and then maybe that helps not feel so hurt and have that knee-jerk reaction of fine, right?
yeah,
If our motivation is to apologize, is simply to have that person not be mad at us anymore, that's going to create a whole different environment.
that's right. And often we give that apology because we're worried that there's been a disconnect in the relationship, but we want to repair that. And so that's motivating, I guess, for us to give the apology. But then we have to realize that that person also needs to get there, and that takes time, and it's just a natural process. So that will help us to sort of relax and be okay with the sort of talk to the hand response that often happens, right? And you know when they get there, because the relationship then will kind of go back into the groove of how it was before, so
Yeah, and that's the part about being vulnerable that's hard, right? And to
yeah,
me, the asking for forgiveness often is such a vulnerable thing that it allows the other person to almost, it allows them the grace. I don't know how to put that, but it almost opens them up. It kind of dissolves the walls, because you're kind of laying yourself out there, and it's really hard to be angry with someone who's really laying it all on the line, because saying, can you forgive me, is extremely vulnerable, right?
yeah,
So I think that really helps to soften the other person's anger. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to be, and with my kids in particular, lots of times, I don't forgive you, I'm still mad. I'm like, yeah, fine. And the other thing is that people can do is say, it's okay. You'll apologize and I'll say, it's okay. And so what I've practiced with my kids especially is, it's not okay that I did that, and you can accept my apology if you want to. So this thing we have as humans to say, oh, it's okay when someone apologizes to us, right? It's all right to say, I accept your apology. Thank you.
I was just going to say that. That's what I model. That's what I model to my, is whenever somebody gives me an apology, rather than saying that's okay, or I forgive you, because if I'm not feeling it in that moment, because I haven't gotten there yet, and I need time, but I do appreciate the apology. And so that is something that I model. I say, thank you for the apology. I do appreciate it. Thank you. And then I take my time. And right. Yeah. So I think that's a huge piece, because it's often people don't know what to say, right? It's okay. Well, no, it's not actually okay to be treated that way. But I do appreciate the apology. Thank you.
All right. So that brings us to our invitation / challenge for the week for you peeps out there listening. So we're going to challenge you to pay attention to how you make repairs. Are you a person that rushes into an apology, just with the words? And again, no judgment attached. All of these challenges are about noticing, they're about checking in, not about badgering yourself. They're just about noticing how you go about doing things. Start with the noticing. So, do you tend to be quick to apologize? Do you not apologize? How do you go about making repairs in relationships? How do you repair if you have a spouse or a best friend or your children or Coworkers, how do you, and do you cut yourself some slack when you make mistakes?
Yes.
You know,
How do you?
you notice that you're beating yourself up about that. Check in with those things. And then once you've checked in and start noticing, take one small step towards making a repair in the way that you might like to be treated if you're not already doing that. So let's say you struggle with owning up your own part in things, you know, take one small step and maybe doing a bit more self-evaluation and looking at how you might have contributed to a rift in relationship. So yeah. To summarize, we just basically talk about like with all things, how what does it mean to you for someone to try to make amends or repairs to something they've done that you have taken offense to, and think about how that can strengthen relationships. Being willing to say you're sorry.
And being kind to yourself, because if the relationship is with yourself, if you've not been kind to yourself, then cutting yourself some slack there as well. So
yeah, and there's a beautiful quote out there, and again, I won't get it right, and I don't know who said it, but it's about I've been listening to my inner voice, and I owe myself an apology.
oh, I love that.
Right. So sometimes the harshest things we say are about ourselves. So
yeah,
making amends to yourself is equally important.
Yeah.
And if you're needing further support, please check out our website, www.fcss.ca. There's lots of great resources. If you're interested in attending a Caregiver Cafe, well, right now in real time through Zoom, check out the calendar, see if there's any happening in your area. So thanks for joining us today, and we will see you back here next week, Friday at 1, where we will continue talking about social connections and relationships.
Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.